At this time, it is my distinct pleasure to call your November 2022 meeting of your Hanover Borough Council to order and ask that we, number one, stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a brief moment of silence. Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and please be seated. With the able assistance of Secretary Felix, I request that we call the roll.
Mr. Fuentes?
Here.
Mrs. Funk?
Here.
Mrs. Greenholt?
Here.
Mr. Greenholt?
Here.
Mr. Hegberg?
Here.
Mr. Kress?
Here.
Mr. Lockard?
Here.
Mr. Ricart?
Here.
Mr. Rowland?
Here.
Dr. Rupp?
Here.
Solicitor Schultes?
Here.
Administrator Hill? Mayor Whitman?
Here.
Secretary Felix? We have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there an announcement of executive session, Solicitor Schultes?
No.
No announcement of executive session. We will move on to Mayor Whitman. You have some chilly awards to give out.
All right. So tonight I have the pleasure of distributing the checks that the Hanover Exchange Club was able to raise from the chili cook-off. And so right off the top, we have the Hanover Exchange. Wait. And it's been really great. The Exchange Club, this is the first year that they did the Hanover Chili Cook-Off. If it wasn't for them stepping up when they did, we wouldn't have had a cook-off this year. So we really appreciate you all jumping in there, and they really did a fabulous job because you did it kind of under the gun. You did not have a lot of time to put it together. No. And I thought it was an outstanding job. And so we appreciate you doing that for Hanover. Plus, not only that, you had a whole new location on top of it.
Yes.
So.
And we're trying to find a reason outside.
So anyway, so we're looking forward.
It's too hot, too.
Yeah, can you do something about that next year? So, although the year before it was raining and cold, so. Anyway, so this is their check for $13,250. Okay. All right, thank you. And next up, we have Guthrie Memorial Library. Shayna? Oh.
She's downstairs.
Okay. So the chili cook-off was able to raise $8,750, which they are allocating to Guthrie Memorial Library. And then next we have Friends of Codorus. Don Eichelberger. And you are receiving a $3,000 check. And next up, we have Chief Clauser. The Hanover Area Fire and Rescue is receiving a check for $3,000. Next, Wayne Waltman with the VFW Post 25006. I know you do a lot with the Exchange Club, so you are receiving $2,000. Next, we have Veterans Matter. Is anybody here from them? Tim? All right. So Wade will accept on behalf. This is like the Oscars. Wade Frisbee is accepting on behalf of the Veterans Matter, and they are receiving a check for $2,000. Next, we have Boy Scout Troop 107. This is Ed Clark. And they are receiving a check for $1,500. Is anybody here? Olive? From the Black, I have to ask you,
That's
is
on
your
the
last
treasurer.
name really Havoc?
That would be her name. It's her Derby name.
Oh, okay, because I was wondering, like, because what a coincidence that would be. Somebody who's on the Black Rose roller derbies would actually have the last name of Havoc. For real. So, anyway. So they are receiving $500. Next, we have the Young Marines. Wait, I think you're up again. The Young Marines are receiving a check for $500. And lastly, we have the Hanover area Jaycees, Robin. And they are receiving a check for $500 as well. And while I'm up, I'm going to continue on.
Amen.
So tonight, Dave, where are you? Over there in the corner. So tonight, it's also my pleasure to be able to give out an Employee Service Award. Dave Myers started working with the borough on September 28, 1992, on the back of a refuse truck. And from what I understand now, his current position is as a mechanic, and he's been with us for 30 years. You know that's could be a rarity these coming up anymore. So a few fun facts about Dave. I see you actually did bathe tonight, but I see that you enjoy high-pressure oil line bathing. Yeah. And your fellow employees know Dave to always be incredibly early for work, just to make sure the coffee is ready when they show up. That's awesome. Dave is also a social butterfly. Most likely he will be in some way share a friendship or have an acquaintance with someone in your life. I'll have to talk to you about it. I don't know who that would be for me. In all seriousness, Dave's dedication and punctuality to the Borough of Hanover for the last 30 years is a great example of what an employer desires to see in a good employee. I'm pleased to present his plaque of service.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, that concludes me for a little bit.
Thank you all, and thank Mayor Whitman. At this time, we will open the floor for the public comment portion of the meeting. If you could adhere by the following instructions, that would be to come forward when recognized by the chair, that being the chair, and state your name, address, and as briefly as you can, the nature of your comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Art Becker, 529 Carlisle Street. I represent numerous property owners within the borough, both landlords and tenants. We're here tonight for two reasons. One, to object to council's adoption of the IPMC in its entirety, and two, to object to the proposed rental unit inspection ordinance. The IPMC, which is, for those that don't know, the International Property Maintenance Code, allows the borough to inspect all residential rental properties. It doesn't matter if you own or rent. The borough now has the right to inspect your property. If the borough does inspect the property and decides something, for example, your kitchen is not compliant with the code, the borough has the right to require you to replace it. It doesn't matter if you're a senior on a fixed income, doesn't matter if you can't afford the improvement, it doesn't matter. You face fines or imprisonment under the IPMC. This is extreme, it's divisive, it's completely unnecessary, and most of the time when I let people know what the IPMC allows a municipality to do, they respond by saying, well, the borough, it's not our intent, it's not what we want to do here. But if it's not your intent, I'm going to respectfully ask, why are you moving forward with an ordinance which then allows for the rental unit inspections? You can always adopt portions of the IPMC. For example, the decking provisions, which the borough's already adopted, you can pick and choose parts of this without adopting the entire IPMC. I'm going to ask, if it's not your intent, then repeal the IPMC in its entirety. We'll go home knowing that maybe not this particular group of people in the borough, but later generations of borough employees or council members will not invade our privacy and force their way into our homes. No one wants the IPMC. No one wants the rental unit inspection ordinance. You might recall several years ago, we had another rental unit inspection ordinance that we talked about. I believe it's accurate to say that Councilwoman Rupp is the only member left on this council that voted for that rental unit inspection the last time. There are two of you, I believe, that opposed the rental unit inspection last time, but voted to put it on the agenda tonight. Why? What changed? I submit nothing changed. The last time we were here, Chief Clauser admitted that there was not one fire in the borough that would have been avoided by a rental, or prevented by a rental unit inspection. And since the IPMC incorporates the fire code, I asked the chief a simple hypothetical question. There's a 2-story, 3-bedroom house. How many smoke detectors do we need? His answer, it depends. This was not an attempt to make anyone look foolish. Chief Clauser's a good man. He has done great service for this community. He certainly has my respect, and he deserves everyone's respect. This question was an example of how even simple questions like this are difficult to answer and impossible to uniformly enforce. And since we were here the last time, I called Chris Miller, the borough's building codes inspector. He confirmed that there is a process in place which right now allows him to inspect residential rental properties, and it is being followed. Anyone can call in with a code complaint, landlords, tenants, neighbors. If it's a life safety issue, Mr. Miller indicated that he would, for example, a non-working smoke detector, he would investigate within 24 hours. All other code complaints are investigated within 48 hours. If there's a code violation, he gives property owners a reasonable time to correct the problem. If the property owner doesn't correct the problem, they get a non-traffic citation. So I would submit there is already a procedure that we're following in the borough to correct code violations. There's also a registration process. There is currently a form that requires landlords to submit to tenants and tenants to submit to the borough the names and addresses of all new residential rental tenants. So there is a registration process. We have it. Last week, I asked for cost proposals, and guess what? I didn't get any. There are 3,300 residential rental properties in the borough. You would need a platoon of people in order to enforce a residential inspection ordinance. How much would that cost? Nobody had any idea. No disrespect to Councilman Hegberg, but when he was asked last week about the cost of the inspections, he said, we could always amend the ordinance. That, with all due respect, sounds a little bit like Obamacare to me. We have to pass it to know what's in it, and we could always amend it. I find that to be a problem, and I think that this ordinance needs to be tabled until at least, if not vetoed outright, tabled until we have answers to questions that we're asking that no one else seems to have an answer for. The last question we had last week was, how would these inspections be implemented? And I had a very simple hypothetical. You have an apartment, you send out a notice to a tenant, we're going to do an inspection tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. You show up with the inspector, you go you knock on the door, nobody answers, you take the key, because you're the landlord, you have a key, you turn the lock, you go in, the lock's changed on the inside, or there's a bolt in the inside that's turned. So now what? The landlord could potentially, under this version of the IPMC and this ordinance, be fined, imprisoned even, if we're supposed to force our way in. That's a breach of the lease. We don't have the right to force our way in. I would submit that the other scenario is you show up 9 a.m., the tenant's there, the tenant doesn't open the door. You have the key, you go in. Are you going to walk into an apartment where you know someone's in there sleeping? They work night work. What if you startle them? People have firearms. What if someone gets shot? That's not an unreasonable concern. The tenants don't want this. It invades their privacy. I don't see any tenants here asking for this. Tenants have already, according to Mr. Miller, a procedure to follow. Now, we're putting landlords in a position where they either breach their lease or face fines or imprisonment. That's not what landlords signed up for. Last week, Councilwoman Funk raised an important issue. If landlords obtain an inspection, won't they be exonerated for future code violations? Answer, no. The landlords are never exonerated. And in some cases, the tenants can be jointly liable, but not very often. I mean, the code's very thick. but it does not exonerate the landlord. The landlord's always liable, even if tenants take the batteries out of the smoke detectors and use it for the remotes. You may take the smoke detectors down. It's going to be the landlord. If you look at the code, the IPMC version that you've adopted, in the fire code, it's going to fine the landlord. Councilwoman Funk also raised another important issue. Her concern was that borough properties were beginning to look run down, and this inspection ordinance would help with this. We have issued right-to-know requests to Gettysburg Borough and Penn Township, both of which were cited by Councilman Hegberg as examples of why we're considering this ordinance. Penn Township responded, they don't know how many residential rental properties they have. They have an estimate based upon their comprehensive plan. It's a percent. Last time I asked them, and somebody did know, it was around 2,000. Now they're saying their estimate is significantly less than that. Their participation right now is about 945 registered rentals. If their number of residential rental properties is around 2,000, it's 50% compliant. If it's higher, who knows? Gettysburg Borough didn't even know. They didn't know how many residential rental properties they had. They didn't even know how many were registered. But we're still waiting a response on the right to know. This ordinance is extreme, it's divisive, and I'm asking you to vote no to the ordinance or, at a minimum, table it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other comment? Please be recognized, sir. Hang on, I have this gentleman. You can be next. This gentleman here, hang on.
Who do you want to go first?
This guy. You're next.
Is that a promise or a threat?
It's a promise. Sorry, I didn't see you a little second, but go ahead. Please come forward. Please come forward so we can hear you, sir. And Dan Frock and address.
You want me?
Right there at the center table is fine. Thank you.
Okay. My name's Dan Frock.
Yes, sir.
I live at 309 Clearview Road. I'm a lifelong Hanoverian.
Okay.
My roots go back even further than that, but I am very much opposed to this. I'm sorry, but I see World War II in here somewhere. I'm going to give you a scenario that I myself went through, so I know of what I speak. Hanover reminds me of this scenario. Hanover has had numerous businesses, lots of things started here in Hanover. They have grown to prosper. Then the owner, for whatever reason, decides they're going out, and a new owner sweeps in. They may be like local people, but in most cases not. They come in here figuring, gee, maybe they're just placed here as the firm that buys the company. They come in here and they think, boy, things are running smoothly here. Looking at the track record, everything's been great for the last X number of years. But gee, they hired me for this big salary. I got to do something. I got to change something. Or the people are going to be wondering, well, why did you even hire this person? Well, we hired you to keep the ball rolling. And when they start tinkering around, in some cases, not all, with things that they know not of, their businesses have escaped Hanover, as any Hanoverian here knows. And I just see a parallel here that at one time you had to be a Hanoverian to be on the board. We were pretty conservative, and now, for whatever reason, we think that we have to bring in people from outside, and if they come with things such as this, well, gee whiz, we hired them, this must be good stuff, believe we ought to go along with it. And not so. I think most born Hanoverians will agree we don't want this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You are next, as promised. Name and address.
My name is Paul Engelhardt. I'm a resident of the borough. Mr. Hedberg is my councilman. Mrs. Rupp is my council lady. I'm here to discuss the recent rise in the parking meter rates. And we don't have much in downtown Hanover. And by raising these rates, you're putting another nail in the coffin. I think we ought to consider something, because a lot of people come in. I go to the Lucky Spot almost every morning, and their traffic has dwindled. And it's going to be happening to other places too. We don't have a main attraction. We don't have anything like Gettysburg or Westminster. And people aren't going to come in. There's a lot of other places you can go and park for free to get your food or do your shopping. So that's my feeling. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Better luck next time. See you guys later.
Yes, ma'am. Come forward and name and address. Nature of your,
My name is Angie Ruth. My address is 123 Broadway, and I'm kind of addressing the same thing that Paul did.
parking? Okay.
Yes, I am an office manager of a law office on Broadway in the first block,
Okay.
and I understand the increase in the fines. I understand the increase in the meters because that's been a long time. However, the $1 to $1 minimum is problematic. It's because people come into our office, drop things off, and it's $1. And the business next to us, the Reader's Cafe, same thing. There was a woman out there. She was a young woman, and she didn't have change, and she said, I'm not going to stand out here and download the app to pay $1 to go in and get a cup of coffee. The same thing with the Lucky Spot. A lot of the business owners, I've talked to Don Little at Little's, also the Reader's Cafe, Andrea at Lucky Spot. We just ask that maybe especially that minimum be rethought. And Gettysburg does not have a minimum. Well, you don't have to pay $1. You can put in a quarter for 15 minutes. York, I think you get 7 minutes for a quarter. Harrisburg is similar, and I just don't think it warrants it, and I would just ask that maybe it be rethought. Thank you so much for listening and your time.
Thank you for the comments. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to go with what I see first, so.
Can I ask a question, or is it just talking?
Generally speaking, we like to reserve this period for comment more so, rather that you want to get us to think about something rather than us being responsible for it, because we're at a little bit of a disadvantage right now. We don't have a manager to speak to you on a coordinated effort. If we can answer it, we will. If not, we will certainly hear the nature of you.
Okay, well, I don't want to assume that I know how IPMC became
Okay,
about here, so that was my question, is how did it become a thing
Oops.
here?
sorry. Name and address first.
Lindsay Crew, 320 Church Street.
Okay.
Like, were you trying to thwart something, or?
How IPMC
Yeah,
became,
a discussion here.
do we have any staff?
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah, we'll let our solicitor handle this one.
Okay. So, first off, the IPMC, International Property Maintenance Code, is not new to the borough. In 2012, the borough adopted the 2009 version of the IPMC. And in 2020, the borough adopted the 2015 version of the IPMC, which is essentially an update of the 2009 version. So the IPMC has been in effect in the borough and used principally by our codes enforcement to investigate complaints in terms of property management. So it's our principal ordinance which we have used, and which we have used for about a decade.
Okay, because I've seen it come across the plate in other municipalities, and it didn't seem to go over real well there either. And I know that, I don't remember his name.
Mr. Becker?
Yeah, he kind of addressed it, but I'm overly familiar with IPMC and all of its flaws. And I'm really glad to hear that even though you've got the 2009, that you then in 2020 went to the 2015 version, because a lot of municipalities adopt this whole thing where they're really looking for one or two things, and then they take this whole 4-inch book and no one really reads the totality of it. And then they just stick with, like, say, 2009. Now, the IPMC was created in the late 90s, just a little background in case you don't know, which I'm sure you do. But it was out of like cities for more like apartment buildings and stuff like that to kind of control some things that were going on there. And I don't know if that really applies to some of the things going on in the local districts. But then that committee every 3 years addresses the flaws that it essentially has found, and then sometimes it doesn't, if you don't keep up with it, it doesn't, like you don't catch the flaws because sometimes the people on the board, not saying you guys didn't, but the concern I think is for the future when maybe it's not, when it can be weaponized and used against citizens for perpetuating of income for the township. The citizens are struggling, I'm sure you guys are too, you know, gas prices and whatever, you know, shenanigans is going on. So if you haven't, like if you're new to the board and you haven't read the IPMC, like read over it. There's some things in there that probably are working well. But just be mindful that even if like every single one of you is like the best-hearted people in the world, that future could come up, someone in the future could maybe weaponize it against your citizens. And I don't think that's what you signed up for when you wanted to sit on this board. And as you're all like actually invested in what I'm rambling on a little bit about, like that's quite impressive. So it kind of tells me that you guys do have hearts and you do actually care about all of your citizens in totality. The IPMC has a lot of things that can absolutely be weaponized. So I just urge you that, I mean, Mr. Becker had mentioned that, you know, hey, maybe just kind of like put a pause on it for a hot second. So some citizens can, who are just finding out about it, like I heard one guy say he found out about it like 30 minutes ago, can like research it and give you feedback. It doesn't need to be contentious. I think everyone wants to work together to have a really good community. And be wary that sometimes, especially IPMC, can be a segue for neighbors to harass other neighbors and harass, you know, like the zoning officer to harass another neighbor. It just, there's a lot of things that really can go wrong. So if you're hearing like what Mr. Art said or what I'm saying, just maybe just pause for just a hot second and consider the outcomes, how negative they could be for your neighbors. Or maybe it's not you, again, like I said, maybe it's the future board and it's going to be your kids, you know. I don't think anybody wants that. So,
Thank you.
what do you think?
Thank you. I see a hand, the gentleman in the back right. Come forward, name, address, and nature of your comment.
My name is James Dugan. I live at 19 West Hanover Street.
James Dugan.
I think we're living in a small town, not a city, and we're not a tourist attraction, as far as I know, at this moment. I don't understand a meter change that makes you put $1 in the meter when I only want to be somewhere for 15 minutes. I don't think that's a reasonable concept. And I also wonder why the hours run so late. 8:30 at night in New York, they stop at 5 p.m. I don't know who wants to be in New York after 5 p.m. anyway, but Carlisle stops at 4:30, so I don't know why the hours are so late. I think this new fee structure puts a lot of pressure on downtown businesses, their employees, and customers. And so I don't think the ticket increase, it was a 500% ticket increase. I thought 250% would be, it was too low. I get it. There should be some punishment for leaving your car somewhere all day. I understand that. But I don't think this structure works, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Isaac Riston. That's ISAACRISTON, and I'm a renter, tenant at 227 Locust Street. So, hi everyone, thank you for coming here and finally having a vote on rental inspections. It's been a long time coming, especially for us having the ball rolling. I always talk about comprehensive plans and how it really should establish the high priorities that our Borough Council looks to. And for me, as a renter, when I look at rental properties being a high priority identified in 2015 to be done and start inspections in 2016, and to see there were at the tail end of 2022 and that hasn't been done, I see a failure of the Borough Council. Now, thankfully, I have Borough Council members, especially from Ward 5, that take issue with that have talked and wanting to get this done for our renters here in Hanover. And so I appreciate you, and I want you to know that your constituents here in Hanover appreciate you as well. Now, I can't really speak to what other speakers have said about how no renters, no tenants will be here speaking to you, because that's clearly not the case. But when I did door knocking for Ward 5 in 2021, one of the main issues I heard was renter protection and the library. Those are the two biggest issues I heard. When doing door knocking throughout all the wards in 2022 this year, renter protection was an issue. So when you're having the idea of, well, what do my constituents think, then like you're looking at a 27-year-old that has done the work for you to knock on doors, to talk to people. When you're asking the idea why more renters coming up to come speak to you, it's because they're scared. They're scared that their landlord's not raise their rent. They're scared that jokes can be made of that, to say that, oh, you know, we'll raise your rent by $50 because you're outspoken in the community. It's not a great feeling, having your home be used as a weapon against you for making public comments, but it happens. You know, when I talk to renters who describe their landlords as slumlords who can get away with whatever they want, it's discouraging to say the least. And so I'm here to talk to you and to say that people in your community want this, that they've been wanting this since 2015. The other borough council members' main issue was this. They weren't able to get it done. So seeing that we've had a vote, seeing that people are pushing for it still, is amazing. So please keep pushing for the betterment of our citizens here in Hanover. Because I can tell you, as a renter myself, I have a 24-hour rule. My landlord needs something done, I have 24-hour notice, and then I'm like, okay, my doors are open, you come on in. Or I'm not going to be here, I'm going to be at work teaching at the elementary level school for Southwestern, so you come get it done. I have good faith in our landlords here that do good work, you know. And I have good faith that our renters here, which we all know is a high population here in Hanover, will support you. Okay, so please.
May I ask you in a word?
Yeah.
Why do you want this?
Why do I want this? In a word?
In a word, if possible.
Necessary. Right? It's necessary.
Now I'm going to ask you to expound, please.
Yeah, of course. When I was talking to residents in Glen Rock, one of the things that happened to them was a terrible fire. And they talked about a rental property that had multiple people there who were displaced because of slumlords that can get away with it. They have about 30% of the population who is low income, who are unable to have actual transportation to go to a grocery store in Glen Rock. But they have a rental inspection for their properties now.
Would safety be, my word to characterize what you're stating,
Yeah.
council, safety concern be?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That would
I think
cover.
when I talk to some residents that are, that want to make sure that our fire chief have the best tools available to them. And I think this would aid them in that, you know. And I don't want to put words in our chief's mouth, you know. I imagine he will make a comment either for or against it himself, but I imagine he sees this in the same light. You know, safety is a very important, you know, and as a renter myself, and some renters, you know, you can go look at them in your wards and ask them. They might not be willing to talk to you because they're scared, but for ones that do, you can go see the terrible circumstances that they live in. I was fortunate enough to see that myself. It exists. It's out there. So safety, necessary, a lot of words you can use for this, but it's an important vote nonetheless. And I'm happy to be the renter, if not the lone renter, here today to tell you about this. It is important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Others to address council, please be recognized.
I don't want to step on Dan Mal's toes by putting in front of him.
We'll get to him.
Thank you for giving me the time here this evening.
Name and address.
My name is William Hartlob. I reside at 319 East Elm Avenue in Hanover, Pennsylvania. I've resided there for over 30 years with my wife and 2 boys. My entire life I've been in the Hanover area. I'd like to start out by thanking all the council and the mayor for your service. I've been attending several months now, witnessing everyone's heart is truly in the borough and the borough residents. Sometimes things can get a little contentious here, but it shows that your heart is truly in the right place. I worked as a law enforcement officer for over 28 and a half years in the Hanover area.
Quite often I worked federal investigations, including the trafficking of heroin and heroin deaths. Some of those brought me into Hanover Borough. I've worked also criminal cases that brought me into Hanover Borough. I was always able to work hand in hand with the Borough Police Department. One of the notable cases, narcotics were actually being manufactured at 2 different residences in Hanover Borough, resulting in a search warrant and seizure from the residents. These narcotics are actually being sold within multiple schools in the area. After 28 and a half years in the Hanover area, I presently work for the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. I've been traveling the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania doing civil and criminal cases. I have taken the month of June off and went to the Pennsylvania Judicial Center and became certified for magistrate. It is my intention to run for magistrate in 2023 and continue to give back to the residents of Hanover Borough. And again, I'd like to thank you for your time and what you do for the community.
Thank you. Did Mr. Mao want to say something? I'm sorry if I missed you.
By the way, I'm voting for that guy.
Okay.
I don't live in the borough. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Mel, State Representative from Adams County. My address is 45 Sandy Court, Hanover. I'm also a landlord here in Hanover Borough, as well as multiple other townships and boroughs. And I came tonight to express my opinion about what's going on with the idea of doing rental inspections. As I said, I own properties, my wife and I own properties in other municipalities and boroughs, and I've seen this exact same thing come and fail and go on multiple occasions. Many questions come to mind, and I know that you can say, well, with the adoption of this ordinance, we can force our way in. Well, first of all, we do have the Fourth Amendment in our Constitution, okay? So if you have someone a renter in an apartment who feels very strongly about their Fourth Amendment rights that says, no, you're not going to come in and invade my abode. And let me tell you where I came up with that term. Many years ago, I went in to inspect a rental unit that I had right up here on Carlisle Street. The library sits in that spot right now. And I knew I was going to have to throw these people out, okay? But I knocked on the door and I said, I'm coming in. I need to take a look at what's going on in here. I thought that they were housing multiple people. I had complaints from all the neighbors. Well, the next thing you know, one of them calls one of your borough police officers, and he comes and he says, Dan, I understand what you're trying to do. This is their abode, and you have no business coming in here. I can't even go in there unless I'm called. Now, if that tenant doesn't call your inspector and say, please come in, and he doesn't want them in, how is he going to get in? And if this allows you to arrest the landlord, and we have many snowbirds in this area, I'd like to become one myself someday, where I live in Florida over the winter time and maybe come back and forth in the spring and summer. How are you going to get that landlord to unlock that door for you when he's 1,000 miles away? I see this as a problem right off the bat with forcing your way in. The other part of this is, if I read this correctly, this allows you to inspect all homes. And my question to those of you that are pushing this, are you planning to inspect every home and not just the rental properties? That's a question. If anybody wants to throw out the answer, yes, we do, or no, we don't, I'd appreciate hearing that answer right now. If you could, I'd appreciate it.
I'll say for council, my understanding is this is for rental properties, not for my home.
Well, the way
You interpret it differently?
that's not what this says.
Please. The gentleman has the floor.
But I get it, but that's not what I read in this ordinance.
Heard.
You know, so, okay, so let's move on a little bit. And I'm not saying what I'm about to say is what's going on here. But I've also seen other communities try to use rental inspections as a revenue source for their community. I've seen it. I've seen it fail almost every single time. But I want to read you something that I brought home from Harrisburg. Supreme Court in Mastrangelo versus Buckley, and I'll just read this one paragraph. A license fee is distinguishable from a tax, which is a revenue-producing measure characterized by the production of a high proportion of income relative to the costs of collection and supervision. Thus, if a license fee collects more than an amount commensurate with the expense of administering the license, it would become a tax revenue and cease to become a valid fee. Okay, what that boils down to is you can't make a dime on this outside of the person in the borough that's administrating. And if you do, it's illegal. That's what this says. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm not saying that's what is driving this. I just want to point it out, and I'm sure with all these people sitting behind me, if this goes forward, the right to knows will start coming on a monthly basis, and that's more trouble and more hassle and more work for the borough, which I'm sure that you do not want. I will say this, as a landlord, and I'm speaking for Dan now, not anyone else, and I'm sure that you guys have ordinances on the books to make sure the outsides of properties are kept in certain conditions. I'm not arguing with that. I think they should be. I think if you have windows boarded up, I think if you have rain gutters hanging on the ground, I think that needs to be addressed. If a property is in bad condition, that should be addressed because it brings the whole town down. I'll pass these pictures around for you. I'll start one on each end, okay? Just so that you have them, and I'll show the borough what I'm talking about. I'll start one here. You certainly take a look at these.
Thank you, sir.
This picture, which you will have pass you in a moment, you can see these weeds have been overgrown for an awfully long time. All the rubbish, a bathtub, been sitting there for an awfully long time. I took this picture yesterday, right on Walnut Street, okay? So my point is, do the outside. Have someone in the borough enforce the ordinance for the outsides to keep them in shape so it doesn't bring all of our properties down. I don't think you're gonna have anybody in here argue with that. But when you cross that threshold into their front door, into somebody's abode, you're now trespassing on their freedoms and their rights. And I'm going to beg you right now to start over with this and concentrate on the outside of these rental properties, outside of all properties, not just rental properties, all properties, to make sure they stay in good repair for our community. And if there's something that gets out of line, have your zoning officer send out a notice saying, look, this is out of line, take a picture of it, send it to them, say, please get this in repair and I'll give you a reasonable amount of time to get it fixed. That's where I think the borough should be concentrating its efforts, not invading somebody's privacy in their abode. Thank you for your time, appreciate it very much.
Good evening, Jennifer Zerfing, 529 Carlisle Street, Hanover. I just wanted to make a point of clarification. The rental ordinance that applies actually to rental properties, the ordinance that you're talking about does apply to rental properties. It's the IPMC that applies to all structures. The IPMC that, as you mentioned, you adopted in 2012. And that makes it sound like it's been a long-standing provision in this community. However, there wasn't a code official adopted and appointed until 2020, until the end of 2020. And so from that standpoint, even though the 2009 code had been adopted, my understanding of going back and looking through the minutes and reviewing the meeting in 2020 where that was adopted is that's when a code official was appointed. And the code official is the person who can actually enforce the IPMC. So yes, it may have been here since 2012, but it didn't have teeth until 2020. And that's the concern, that the IPMC applies to all structures. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
How are you?
Good.
Glenn Bang, 1281 Honda Road, Hanover. I have rental properties in Hanover Borough plus other municipalities, and I'll respect you for your time tonight, and I appreciate having this opportunity. But I'm here to support what Attorney Becker said on the IPMC code. I think he did an excellent job on explaining it, so I won't get into it, but I think you really need to think about this before you vote on it. Your reputation's on the line for this community. And since last week's meeting, I talked to two young people. They were in their mid-40s, and they're investors in properties, and they're landlords also. And they said they won't buy a property in Hanover Borough. So I looked them right in the eyes, and I said, why? And they said, it's too hard to do business in Hanover Borough. It's just hard to do business. Is that really the reputation we want? So what I'd like to put to you tonight is, once this borough council breaks trust in the community, you're going down a slippery slope that you probably don't want to go down. And last week, I think it was Mrs. Peterman talked about the storm water fee that was put into effect a couple years ago. Well, that was a disaster. I mean, you people are collecting millions of dollars, and the streets are still running full when you have a downpour. When I come to town, I might as well bring my kayak, and it's just terrible. It's a safety issue because of all the stormwater running down the streets. And I agree with Dan Mao on clean up the outside. I mean, you know, and I know there's some landlords that are slumlords. Take care of those. Don't punish all landlords or all residents of Hanover Borough. Thank you very much, and I hope you make the decision that Attorney Becker's happy with, and also me.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Pat Hagerman. I reside at 207 Eichelberger Street, and I have a few properties in the borough. I'll be very brief. I'm just here to say that I also agree with Attorney Becker and what he's saying. Last week, you guys asked about bringing some tenants forward. I appreciate the gentleman that spoke earlier. I went home, I contacted my tenants. I'm proud to say that there's a handful of them here tonight that are totally opposed. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. Gentleman in the back.
My name's Richard Krill III, 130 Carlisle Street, Hanover, PA. Mostly the same things that you've heard, but one of my biggest concerns is there won't be very much transparency in this, and the fees that are collected, I could see this easily becoming a money source for the borough, and we would really have no way to know how the money is being allocated. That would be one of my big concerns. Another concern I have is I know that perhaps people believe, well, the landlord will just pay for this. Say you enacted a fee per rental unit next year. I have existing leases, yes, I would eat that cost, but when that tenant moves out, that lease is going to go up to cover it. It's the tenant that's going to pay. So don't be confused that the landlords are going to pay for this. You'll be affecting the people of your community that can afford it the least. Another thing I would like to point out is a lot of the rentals I do are built new. So I'm meeting today's building codes. But I have a fear that shortly after something's built, I'll receive a fee for 6 months later to come and inspect something that I just paid tens of thousands of dollars to get inspected. So those are just a couple of my concerns regarding the ordinance that you're considering. And then one other thing about the parking meters. I have various businesses downtown, people that come and patronize the businesses. It's very confusing. They put a quarter in, nothing shows up on the meter. They go to the next meter, they put another quarter in. I don't know if you need to put stickers on it or something, but it's very confusing, and a lot of people have lost money because they didn't understand that it's a minimum of an hour.
Anyone else? Oops. Hang on. We've got a new.
want to say I think this.
I'm sorry, name and address first.
Deb Frock, 309 Clearview Road.
Thank you.
This ordinance appears to be a huge power grab, and it is unconstitutional. It invades our privacy because it is not just for landlords and tenants, it is for personal homeowners. And I yield the rest of my time to Mr. Becker.
Mr. Becker, did you ask for it?
I could wait at the end if I feel I need to say anything else.
Well, I'd just like to jump in, and this is an open invitation for anyone in the room. The big issue, I think there's been some misconception here that this is a moneymaker for council. There's no nods of agreement amongst council. This is never, I will state on behalf of. Yes, this is not easy for council. This has never been, the genesis of this has never been as a grab for money. I think the question that council is wrestling with, the issue, the nature of all of it, and I open it up to the floor to those of you who have spoken or those of you who have not, it ultimately, our responsibility is to preserve the safety of the individuals in the borough. And I need to know, from my own standpoint, or those of you, are there people who would say to council that non-owner occupied housing promotes safety rather than owner occupied housing? As in, am I more apt to be responsible and safety oriented in my own home? Or is my renter more apt to be owner and safety oriented in the home that I rent to them? These are the issues that I'll just say as one counselor in particular that I'm starved for the information on your input on. Yes, I get it, it's an impact. But I also get it, and I believe council gets it, that if you are renting, you are not renting to give money away. You are in a for-profit nature of the business that you are conducting. And as such, you have a responsibility to your neighbors around you. For example, if I am renting a property, or if I'm allowing a property of mine to be rented, I have an obligation to be responsible and respectful and safety-oriented to my neighbors around me. God forbid that property, through someone not being as safety-conscious or oriented as I am, that it would catch fire or it would fall into some state of disrepair. It's not good for any of us. So we are, honestly, I'm speaking for myself now, and I hope I'm speaking for them. We are not here to adversely impact anyone. We are here looking to optimize a solution towards how can we manage what you as property owners and landlords want to do, you as tenants who occupy these properties want to do, and keeping it safe for all of us. That's the nature of it. And I swear to you, that's how my opinion is being formulated. Can anyone offer evidence to the fact that says that something? Yes, ma'am.
It really does sound like, at least to me, in my Pollyanna heart, that you guys just want to protect some residents like the guy in the
There's no
orange.
preconceived anything, ma'am. Sorry, there's not. To my knowledge, there's no preconceived anything. There's no. This is how government should work. This is before you, the people. This is before us, the decision makers.
Right, oh, sorry. I don't think I meant preconceived. I just meant, I'm seeing that you guys want to help protect the people like the gentleman in the orange hat.
Everyone. We want to protect everyone.
Right, safety reasons is what I'm
You
hearing.
as well. If you are a renter of a property, I want to prevent you from, say, being sued by a negative impact to your property because you maybe looked the other way from a standard which maybe would have been good for all of us.
Right, and I'm not a lawyer, and this is by no means legal advice.
Neither am I.
But it's my understanding that there actually are things that a renter could do through the Landlord-Tenant Act, especially when it's safety related, and maybe if it's applicable, instead of the forms just being in the magistrate, which there are blank forms for that can be filled out. And if they don't have the money, they can attach an IFP, which then says to the judge, look, I really don't have the money, but I have an issue, a safety issue that needs solved. And if people are coming to the borough, if the papers are readily available at the magistrate, maybe they could be readily available here, just a blank form to start a civil
Good suggestion.
procedure along with the IFP in case they really can't afford it. And that would give them their safety without essentially like stepping on the Constitution and solve it
Solve the
both
problem.
ways.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What does IFP stand for?
Because that's Latin, and I can't really pronounce it, but
Oh,
it's
okay,
like
never mind.
informa pauperis.
That's right, correct.
And I'm not a lawyer, so this is not legal advice, but if you can't afford the fees and the service, because, you know, rules of civil procedure, you have to have it served by a sheriff, that those things can be helped along, if it really is a safety issue. I don't think anybody wants to see anybody's house burnt down and babies dying and awful, awful things like that, you know. So if Mr. Schultes can say that it's okay that you guys do have the blank forms, that might be really super helpful to the citizens to maybe not feel, not everybody's comfortable walking into a courtroom to ask for, or the courthouse to ask for those forms, or they can't get to the law library at either county, really. So that might be a,
We do have a codes organization where tenants or whomever are free to call in, and they can do the same on our website, and it costs them nothing, and file complaint against whatever, about whatever that they see as
I'd be
relevant.
very curious to like see that. And it's funny because I'm sure you guys know that there's a ton of resources that you put out there, but as citizens, like if it's not our wheelhouse, we don't always know where to go and what to do.
It's a very valid point.
So maybe, I don't know if you guys have a newsletter or a Facebook group page, or I think HOG's a pretty big thing over here, like maybe somebody can just mention that so people do know where to go and they can get familiar, and instead of having the board and the citizens and everybody, you know, let's just bridge it through things like that by getting that information out so they know where they can go. And I think you guys have a pretty good mediation service in Hanover. Maybe that's an option to see if there's a way to do like some donations maybe for a landlord and a tenant to have mediations instead of going into big scary court. And then once you've done all the olive branches to give people the benefit of the doubt to do the right thing, then when they haven't, you know, go ham, that's fine. But maybe just some other steps.
Thank you. I'm going to let Mr. Malcolm back. I think he has
Bill,
a,
can I have her name again? What's your name?
well, you come forward, Mr. Mal. I think he's hopefully answering my question.
What is it?
Lindsay Krug?
Thank you. I'll stand. This will only take a second. And kudos to you for saying you want to make sure everyone in the borough is safe.
Amen. That's what
Everyone
this is about.
includes everyone.
Yes.
And we discovered just a few minutes ago that this was only going to be for landlords, but everyone doesn't just include landlords.
You said it went beyond that in your earlier comments.
Yes, it does, and
Right.
you want to protect everyone. If you think for 1 second that there are people that live in their own homes that they own, can't live with smoke detectors with the batteries pulled out, or railings broken off of stairwells, or windows that are broken, or hot water heaters that don't work, you're sadly mistaken. Believe me, I've been in this construction/rental property business a long, long time, and I've seen houses where people own or occupied homes can live worse than you can possibly imagine. So if you really want to protect everyone in the borough, like you said, you got to include all the homes in the borough, not just the ones, the tenants that rent. You have to include them all if you want to protect everyone, because everyone is everyone. And
Agreed, sir. Would you recommend that they be protected equally under the same doctrine or documentation, or would you believe that renting for profit, if you will, would have a level of expectation and/or service that would be different than occupying the confines of your own domain?
I think it should be complaint driven. If a tenant or somebody else has a complaint, If the next door
Address it.
neighbor sees a window busted out and it's been busted for 6 months, I think that should be a complaint called to your zoning officer saying, hey, there's tenants there and there's a window broken out and I know they have kids, somebody's gonna get hurt. Yes, that should happen. But to just knock on a door and say, I'm here to inspect your abode, your home, I'm coming in, I'm gonna come in to your home. And once they rent it, that is no different from somebody who owns it. It is their home. And they have an expectation of privacy. And if there's a problem, I think that they should all be notified that they can call here and say, hey, I've got a problem. A neighbor should be able to call, just like that picture I passed around. Okay? And I'm gonna make that call. Believe me, I'm gonna make that call because it's right beside one of mine and I'm tired of looking at it. But it should be complaint driven. You should not be invading people's privacy. Thank you. And it should be for everyone. If you say everyone, everyone means everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Mr. Becker?
If the chairman would permit,
I will.
just to follow up on his point, I think before you take on the obligation and the responsibility to pass a new ordinance and implement a whole new program, I think you first have to stop and ask yourselves if what you have is working. And when I talked with Mr. Chris Miller, I was pretty impressed today. And from what I can tell and from what he told me, his position is working. He confirmed that there is a process in place which allows him to inspect residential rental properties, the exact scenarios that we're talking about right now, public safety, concerns about the safety of children, concerns about the safety of residents. There is a process in place that allows for that to happen. And those complaints can be filed anonymously. They can be filed through the borough website. Those code complaints can be filed by tenants, neighbors. He investigates if they're serious in nature, or he called them life safety issues, like a non-working smoke detector. He'll investigate and deal with that within 24 hours. If it's a non-life safety issue, all other complaints within 48 hours of code violations. So I submit, before the borough takes a step of saying, hey, let's put in a whole new process of addressing this, you almost have to say that the process that you have right now is not working, and I respectfully disagree with that. I think Mr. Miller is pretty impressive. I spoke with him. I think the process that you have in place is pretty impressive. After he explained it to me, I didn't understand it, but I think your point is well taken. I don't think there's anybody in this room that wants anyone to be unsafe or to ever see someone get hurt in a fire or a child. God forbid. That's horrible, even to think about that. But the problem is, the process that you're going through right now, I think, addresses that adequately. And if it doesn't, I would like to know why. I haven't heard anyone say that if they got in touch with Mr. Miller, that the issues that were raised haven't immediately been addressed, haven't been responded to. The other issue, I would like to follow up on Lindsay's point, thank you. There are other things that we haven't talked about tonight, just briefly, that if a tenant has a complaint about a landlord, which they do, and they should, there's some bad apples out there. There's no question about that. I think Councilwoman Funk's point's well taken. I think the chair's point's well taken. But there are situations and times when tenants need legal advice. There is a consumer guide to landlord and tenant rights. It's published by the State Attorney General's office. It's online. We could distribute it. This is information that tenants should know. The chair's point is well taken. If they don't, they should. Should it be distributed? Should it be at the borough office? Yes, I think it should be. I'm sure Mr. Miller knows about it. He was on, his A game was extremely impressive. I'm sure he knows about it, but he could be counseled on how to distribute that. There's also informal pauperous, a tenant can file a landlord-tenant complaint pro se, but there's also mid-pen legal services where you get free legal advice if you qualify, and they will represent a tenant for free. And the Landlord-Tenant Act levels the playing field because it allows the landlord for the tenant to recover 3 times their actual damages plus counsel fees. It's in the statute. And if the state AG's office feels that the violation is serious enough, they'll take the case. You can ask them. They do take some cases. The cases I've seen are bold cases. They're a little bigger, a little more serious, and they come in with all the resources of the State Attorney General's office. Doesn't happen often, but when they do, that is a serious issue, and that is a very, that they have an expertise that is unmatched. So I submit to answer the chair's question. Not only did Mr. Miller explain a process to me that seemed to work, there are options for tenants who are saying, look, my place isn't safe. Withhold rent. You could escrow rent. Landlord can't sue you. you can get 3 times your actual damages plus counsel fees.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, one last thing. So, you talked about safety, and I agree. And when you look back at the comp plan that was discussed here in Hanover in 2014 and enacted in 2015, the number one line item when they're talking about this is for tenants are assured of safe and sanitary housing. Landlords gain protection from tenant lawsuits regarding substandard units, and then adjacent property owners and the community benefit from proper maintenance that keeps the neighborhood marketable. This is on page 55 of the 285-page document that was done in 2014. So the idea that our current standards were good back then simply do not hold up. Because if they did, then that would not have been added in the comp plan. It would not have been a high priority to be done by 2016. But here we are discussing in 2022. So again, I urge you to vote an affirmation on this. This has been an issue that's been discussed in Hanover for a very long time. I think tabling it at the very least is not an appropriate action. It should be decided here.
I hate to put you on the spot, and
Go ahead.
Respectfully, you have the right to decline this, but you've been the voice in the room speaking for this side.
Sure.
What's missing? What do you need from your side of this equation to feel confident in the safety and the long-term viability of your housing situation?
Yeah, so I think what it comes down to is, at the very least, updating our codes, what Penn Township does, updating, making sure that what we have in front of us is making sure that things are inspected on a at least biannual or non-annual basis. That's what was discussed in, 2014. That's, and, I imagine our people here have discussed and interviewed it. When I saw your talking in different borough management meetings online, you guys have done a really good job about this and have discussed it for a long time. This is not the first meeting that I've seen you guys discuss it or have it on the talk about, but it needs to be done. And then when you have, say, like, oh, you should, us as tenants come forward, how do you get, there's so much more that can be done, but having it be mandated and putting that pressure on the landlords instead of the tenants will help out greatly, And then as a tenant myself, I have to allow my landlord in. It's part of my contract that I sign, that I have on top of my fridge. And I check it every single time before a contract signs, for it to be signed again. Because it's important to know my rights, to know that if my landlord wants to come in my property and gives me a 24-hour notice, they have to be able to come in, right? That's part of it. I sign that right away because it's part of a contract that I sign. And so if you're asking me what's missing, it's to make sure that we're up to snuff with other municipalities in Pennsylvania, basically, to make sure that tenants are protected.
Thank you.
No problem.
Just as a moderator of this discussion, is there, to the tenant perspective, is there any, we've heard a lot of, I'll say, the other side. And in fairness to the conversation and deliberation, is there someone else who would like to speak, springboarding off of the comments that the gentleman just made? Okay. Is there anyone who would?
One more thing.
Please, I'll ask for new and unique, perhaps. Yes.
May I?
You may.
First of all, tenants are under lease agreements which have to be followed. And there are rules and regulations within the tenant's rights. But before I said it sounded like a huge power grab to me, and one of the things that makes me say that is that the borough modified the IPMC to include imprisonment for anybody who does not pay a fine if they are received a fine for not being up to code. And it doesn't matter if the person is not financially able to fix something that is wrong, that the borough says needs to be fixed. Doesn't matter if they're sick, elderly, doesn't matter. They can go to jail, and the borough modified the IPMC to include imprisonment if the fine was not paid. So that's why I said it seems like a power grab. It seems like a way of controlling people. And And it's not just tenants, it's property owners too, homeowners. So, and I yield my time again, Mr. Becker, if you want to say anything else.
Yes, in the back. And I'm gonna, as we segue through this, if you could say, this, anything that's unique and different, let's bring that to the table and as we conclude.
You asked for a specific example. As a landlord, let's say the only thing we were talking about is smoke detectors. I would pay a fee this year to have my rental unit inspected for proper smoke detectors. You stated that the Borough Council's concern is for the safety of all its residents, then why would they not go to every homeowner and be like, you need to have your home inspected, the fee's $100, we're looking at smoke detectors? Because you know just as well as I do that there are homes in the borough that are owned and not rented, and they don't have functioning smoke detectors. But by your own admission, your only concern is for the safety of the residents of the borough. So that is an example right there of, earlier you insinuated that homeowners would take more care, so therefore we don't have to really worry about them. But I know for a fact that's not like that.
Under the guise of not to offend anyone from, let's say, what's a restaurant franchise that we don't have in town?
Applebee's.
I was gonna, that's what came to my mind. Applebee's? Okay, so under the expectation that Applebee's is operating a for-profit business venture, they're not selling me my dinner for fun, if you will. There's a public expectation that as allowed to be a for-profit business venture within the jurisdiction of this political entity, that they should ascribe to, uphold, and withhold certain health inspection aspects, if you will. However, to my own kitchen, they don't have any interest because I'm not for profit. If I kill somebody, if I poison somebody in my own home, it's me.
True.
Loosely, just to help, and I'm not making a
understand
legal
that,
argument, I'm trying to connect with you as far as what I was trying to convey earlier.
But quite
I don't wanna
often,
argue.
quite often, it's insinuated that this is for the safety of all residents of the borough. But what you're saying it's not, you're saying that anybody that is looking to make a profit, that's the people that we need to.
Akin to the commercial driver's licensing system. I don't know if you are aware or not, but I currently have a CDL license. Because as having a commercial driver's license, I maintain that for my own profit, let's just say. You may not have that. You are equally entitled to drive from point A to point B. However, when I do so with my commercial driver's license, being for profit, the rest of the world kind of has an interest in me being safe, as in I'm not driving 80 hours straight, I'm not popping this, doing that, if you will, because I am for profit. That's where I believe you cross a threshold of
But I
responsibility.
I still have to pay for my license, and I still have to be tested.
You don't pay what I pay.
No, I know.
I pay a lot more.
You're right. I understand that.
And with that then is because it is for profit, if you will. And
Well, I just wanted to point out that you're going to get pushback because it seems like
understand.
often you say this is for the safety of all our residents, but the rules are not going to apply to all the residents. They're only going to apply to certain residents.
But would you advocate, though, that under the auspices of stepping in under public health where we inspect every kitchen of every restaurant, that we should come into your home and inspect your kitchen? I mean, that's kind of the, if I'm understanding you, is that the reasoning you're trying to employ?
Only because you often are making the statement that's for safety of all the residents. And it just doesn't appear that way. So,
sorry, I'll rephrase that. Our responsibility is not to interfere in your personal life. Our responsibility as a council is to maintain the safety of all the property owners, all the residents, everyone who comes in and out of this political entity. And as such, that's where this is coming from. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Ron Long, 815 Broadway.
Brad Long?
Brian.
Brian Long.
I'm not a landowner, and based on the little bit I've heard here, there's no way in the world, I live in a home and I'm working to buy that home. There's no way in the world I'd buy a rental property in Hanover Borough. This is ridiculous. There's no way somebody's gonna walk into my house that I'm paying for, whether somebody's renting it or not, that's the house I'm paying for, tell me what to do like that. I understand their safety. As a hunter, it's something I love to do, I'd research it a lot. I don't expect you to research hunting for me. So if safety is really a key for a tenant, is really that important, how much research are they doing? How much are they looking to take responsibility for their own safety? It's not your job to be my safety police.
That's correct. Absolutely. That's not a borough council.
Anyone else? Yes.
Good evening, how's everybody doing? I'm glad to see all these people here. I'm Wendy Beckner, I live at 109 McAllister Street. And thank you, Attorney Becker. My friend found this on Facebook not this past Friday, Friday before, about this IPMC. This is just a small piece of a bigger agenda when it comes down to it. But thank you, because have you ever seen, how many times have you seen this many people at a borough council meeting?
Last week, but not often.
2019, when we discussed this the last time. Yeah.
We the people, right here, we need to get involved. We are putting all this on the borough council's shoulder. These things come up, we don't have a clue, because why? We haven't showed up. It's time for all of us residents to show up. I'm a tenant, and I've been blessed. My landlord is amazing. My hot water heater went out, hour and a half I had hot water. I'm blessed. I have a friend that's not so blessed, who rents from somebody here in the borough that's in this office, and she's not living in a good situation. But she can't come to the borough because she's afraid she's gonna get evicted. She doesn't have first month, last month, and security deposit. And she's renting from somebody on this board right now who has a small child. Who has a small child who is breathing in mold and mildew. The walls leak inside the house. They had a roach problem. Guess who had to get rid of that? Because a tenant moved in, which I knew, when I knew who it was, lived beside me and was roach infested. Moved all his stuff down. They battled roaches. They had to go get commercial roach from an exterminator because the landlord wouldn't do anything. Now they're infested with mice, and the landlord still won't do anything. So this has to go for all of us. We have to look inside our souls and say, what are we going to do to help the next person? That goes for landlords and tenants. I've been blessed. I really have. And Attorney Becker, thank you. We all need to stay involved, because I'll tell you what, last week, when this issue was done, what happened? Did anybody stay for the whole borough meeting? No. People got up and walked out them doors. There was more things to be discussed, and people walked out them doors. I'm to blame. I was born here, I'm still here, I haven't left Hanover, obviously I like it here. 52 years. Last week was my first borough council meeting. Shame on me for not getting involved. We all need to work together. So I'm just glad, hey, we got some people here to help you guys out. And thank you, because I want to tell you, as a tenant, you know I live on McAllister Street. Railroad Street's right behind me. Neighbors, trash, all in the back alley. I called the borough. They told me who to call. That code officer was out there that day. I can't remember his name.
Chris.
It was right, Chris. Nice guy. Called me on the phone 20 minutes later. I said, I've asked for a month now for them. I couldn't even get out my garage doors. It was that much trash. And the code officer came out that day. So thank him, because it wasn't just my garage. It was on the other side of the alley. It was a wreck. So thank you all for showing up tonight. This is what we need to do. We the people have to take our town back, but we need all your help. You guys need ours. Thank you, and God bless.
Additional comment? Just, yes, sir.
Bill
Name and
Redding, 230 Stock Street. I want to second Art Becker, Dan Mao. Thank you for expressing our right to privacy as residents, whether we're rental tenants or landlords or homeowners. Thank you for speaking up as a homeowner yourself and demanding this is not right. I've talked to several people over this last week since I heard about it last week. 0 people want this. You know, I do respect the gentleman who is a tenant and has been voicing his support for this. And I'd like to have a task force or a sit-down task force to discuss what the gentleman wants or what a group of tenants want that we already, more than what we already have. And I think it's working, okay, from what is discussed and some good points some people have made. We go down a slippery slope, like the one gentleman said, where we're busting down doors to get into your residence in the name of safety. To me, that's wrong. To me, we need to work together with the community and not try to pass something like this in 1 month. You need to reach out to the constituents, the landlords, the tenants. You have a list of us. Ask for our help. We'll give you some good ideas. I encourage you to assess the current processes that are in place to get places inspected or issues resolved and addressed.
Philip, I've been thinking while everyone's been talking here tonight, what would you think of a workshop in which we have representation from some landlords, council, people of the borough, whether they own private homes, et cetera, and that would begin to work together on this issue?
That is what I want.
Would you like that?
That's what I want.
And that's been offered to it. Time out, let me speak for a moment. Let me give you a little education on governmental operations here. We work by committee. That's where this information starts. I appreciate the woman that spoke about being involved. We have plenty of committees that discuss these. No citizens show up. That's where the sausage is ground, just like in DC. This did not happen in a month. This has been a 1.5-year process going through committee and to the council, to the work groups, and back to ordinance and legal to get it worked out. This has been a 1.5-year process, and it all starts in committee. That's where you need to be involved. So this isn't like backdoor, last-minute kind of situation. That's how the government works. Once it gets to council, it's gone through all legal reviews, it's been publicly advertised, and it's all been done as part of development in the council, in the committees. And we have 10 committees.
I'll let the gentleman respond if you'd like to, or, again, you're addressing council, it's not your obligation to, this isn't a tit for tat.
Phil.
It can be, excuse me, I've offered the floor to the gentleman who's speaking before us.
I think, Phil.
Councilor Flom.
Phil, workshop would be different than a committee, Chuck. And this has got to be improved upon. We are not improving. We are now stepping in to a new realm. These people here all have investments and livelihoods in Hanover. I think that when you address a committee, they haven't been successful, okay? What I would like to do is to simply develop a workshop, not a committee, Chuck. You make it sound like everything's developed from committees.
Well,
But
that's
they're
the
not,
way- that's
Chuck,
the way it
they
works.
are not. And
Fine,
these
ma'am.
people should be heard, and
can
I'm
be
willing
heard.
to become part of that, Chuck.
Mrs.
You know,
Mrs.
no,
Mrs.
now
Funk,
let
if
me
you,
finish.
if,
You
respectfully,
argue
madam,
with these
if you
people.
could please just take a breath.
I'm taking a breath. But
in
I'm listening to all
in
these
a
people.
moment, we're all trying to work together.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are.
No, we're not. I have come to the conclusion we are not tonight. I want to work together with these people.
Your suggestion
But
would be
you're
to forego
suggesting
the
they
committee
weren't
and,
interested.
and to appoint a work group. Is that,
I want to have a work group appointed, not a committee. And I want to be able to work with the people, okay?
Amen.
And I want to be part of that, because my interest is making this town better, Bill. And I don't think we've resolved this issue. We still have questions, and things are glossed over, and I don't want that.
can I ask a question of the group? Anyone feel free to respond, or the gentleman who's sitting here if you'd like to. My understanding is this is a registration at the moment. This is a registration at the moment that it is council's intention that over the next year to develop through committee involvement, workshop involvement,
Yes.
citizen involvement, the promulgation of the regulations that would be attached to the governing registration process. Are there those here that believe that this is all of it? Because I'll tell you, that's not my understanding. And if you look at the published agenda, I don't believe that, that understanding might be in Attorney Barry.
Well, I think this is a good conversation to have. This ordinance does involve registrations of residential rental properties.
With the addition somewhere down the road.
With the
yes.
addition that somewhere down the road, there would be inspections. That's
Yes,
what this
agreed,
ordinance says.
agreed.
But we were here for two different reasons. The first was the IPMC. And the IPMC is the ordinance, the code that the borough adopted that allows a code inspector to go into every single person's home,
Okay.
look around, identify code violations, and cite them. That's the first issue. That's the first reason we're here. And,
Understood.
where I disagree with Councilman Hegberg's position is we don't sit around and read the minutes of committee meetings and find out how our privacy is going to be violated and how our property rights are going to be taken away. We don't, maybe we should. We probably should. This is not the same as what Councilwoman Funk's proposal would be, to have a group of people that sit down informally and say, look, what are your concerns? Let's address those, because I think there's a lot of things that could be on the table that aren't. I think everybody here agrees that there are some bad apples. Everybody here agrees there's some residential rental properties that look run down. Nobody wants that. But, for example, I'll just throw something out that's new. You said what's new and unique? Here's what's something that's new and unique. There was a program for businesses downtown that said, we'll loan you money if you invest the money in the facade of the business, some years ago. I'm not sure who underwrote that. YCIDA, YCIDC.
It wasn't a loan.
Somebody, but, maybe one suggestion is, what we could do is say, we got landlords here that these buildings don't look good on the outside. Maybe we could find a program where they could borrow money and they would improve the outside of these buildings. That would directly address Councilwoman Funk's concerns and perhaps many others, and I would agree wholeheartedly with that. Should be paid back, maybe low interest or no interest loans. There's an example of the kind of things we can do if we get together instead of trying to, pass something that we say, well, you missed the committee meeting, too bad. We're here, that's too bad. This is the way we do it in Washington. We're not Washington, D.C., folks. We're not Washington. We're not in Washington, and with all due respect, we shouldn't treat this like we're in Washington.
But
Go ahead.
as the spokesman for the interest, let's say, if this is just about the establishment of registration and the rhetoric has been in opposition to the enforcement, the inspection, all of the fear of, that has not been written yet. Is that, are we all talking?
If this ordinance passes, we are
Same
on the
thing.
road for rental unit inspections. There is no
Yes,
need for
agreed.
that.
No,
Okay, but that's the problem.
self-admitted, but that has not been established yet. What, the timeframe, we're being told approximately a year to develop.
That's a distinction without a difference. You might as well pass an ordinance that allows for that to happen today, because you're saying, well, we shouldn't have to worry about it because it'll happen a year and a half from now? Right now, today.
Is there no value in the fact that if on the tax record that, let's say you have a property that you do not live in, on the tax records, and there would be an emergency situation that personnel would be involved to respond to that they don't need to know the distinction between you being there versus someone else? Is there no value in that?
Yes, there
Because
is
that's
value
what
in
this
that.
is at this point, to my
No,
understanding.
that's fair. You were not here last week. I think everyone was here.
Agreed,
but you.
and I'm still seeing it in my lane.
Okay, no
Yeah.
problem, and with all due respect, I don't want to repeat what I already, with the same issue.
Understood.
But
I'm up to
To address
speed.
the chair's point,
Yes.
the Hanover Public School District has a database that has the names of every,
Well, we're not them.
we're the Hanover Borough, I'm real clear on what we are. But I'm also letting you know that we can't ignore the fact that we're partners in the grand scheme of things with Hanover Public
should
School
work together
District.
better.
And we,
Gotcha.
and I think that we work together, and I believe there are many people on this council that would agree with that, and I think you probably would too.
Amen.
They have a database.
Yes.
That database has the names of all property owners and children that attend Hanover Public School District, and those that are in cyber school and homeschooled, and I believe it's fair to say, every resident in the borough is in that database. And I'm not aware of any situation where there was a 911 call or an EMT call, I'm not being sarcastic, where someone calls in and said, you know, you got to respond to 25 Potomac Avenue, and someone says, well, we checked the database, Bob, we don't know who's in there, we're going to call that one off. No, they're going to show up, they're going to deal with the problem, and they're going to go home. So, but to the chair's point, yes, that would be helpful, but I think that data exists. There's no reason, and the Hanover Borough already has that as well. Maybe it's not up to date, maybe it's not in a usable format, but that's a different issue.
Sure.
It's certainly appropriate, but you don't need an ordinance that requires the inspection of all residential rental properties in the borough to accomplish that. And that's the problem. I think the first step of registration is really a pretense to pass the ordinance and say, oh, don't worry about it. It's a year and a half from now. No, tonight's the night we worry about it.
Point made.
And it's not Washington. This is Hanover Borough, folks. We can't do it that way. To Councilwoman Funk's point, I think there would be I would be willing to be on that committee. There are also people that would be willing to meet with tenants and find out what's going on. I bet you Mr. Miller would be interested in that.
The individuals that you speak for and who have delegated their time to you as their, say, would-be spokesman, would it be acceptable that this would be a registration process only for record-keeping and/or emergency situations without necessarily the inspection component?
No, I think
Is that
this is a
acceptable, or is this all or
pretense. No one
nothing?
believes that. With all due respect to the chair, no one believes that if you register residential rental properties, that you're not going to turn around and inspect them. In fact, you tied the two together in the same proposed ordinance. No one believes that. But if you're saying, would it be helpful to know that more information about who lives in the borough, how many children are in a particular house, if there is a 911 call, yes. But I think there are other ways to get that data than that you already have the registration forms that are filled out, and Hanover Public School District has that information, whether they would be able to share it. Anytime you talk about minors, it's very delicate.
Sensitive.
And I think that there probably is a way, not that it shouldn't be shared, there's probably a way to do that. Why have two databases? Why not just have one?
Sure.
But I think to the chair's point, would that be helpful? Absolutely. But do I agree that this is the way to go about it? No, I think it's a pretense. Maybe it's not your pretense, but I think it's going to be, and maybe to other people's points, that maybe right now, this is not the intent of the people that sit here before us, but it could be used against political, your neighbors could use it against each other, political adversaries could use it against each other, they could weaponize it, and it has very draconian. And to another thing, I think that one of the things, let me just say this last thing, to Mr. Hegberg's point, all these other municipalities have done this. No, they haven't. If you look at theirs, they don't have jail time for violations. They've modified the IPMC. This version, even if that's what you choose to do, which I hope that you don't, this is not the version that anybody else is adopting. And to the extent that he's saying it is, it's not. You can read it and verify that yourselves.
Mr. Becker, wouldn't it be best when we acknowledge the fact that we want registration, that this would be a great topic to put into an agenda for a workshop to,
Yes.
because I think
it is.
we have to stop now and we have to develop a workshop and then begin to talk.
I would be willing, I know Mr. Redding, others have expressed a willingness to do that. I don't think we're beyond the time when we can talk. I think this is just starting. I mean, Councilman Hegberg says this is over. I think it's just beginning.
Yes.
These people didn't know about this. This has been a week. I mean, maybe we should be reading the minutes, but we haven't been. And I'm not sure if we read the minutes, we would even know what the ordinance said that was being under discussion. So I think now's the beginning, not the end of this process. But I think it's a good conversation. I'd like to be part of that, because I think there's some ways that working together, we can make this better for everyone, including tenants. I think there are some bad apples. There are some serious problems out there. We need to focus on it. I think Mr. Miller should be part of that discussion, because I think if people that are advocating this understood what he was doing and able to do, I think they'd be surprised. I was.
It's very good. Thank you.
Is there a way?
Thank you,
Ms. Funk.
You're welcome.
Is there a way through the process, which that's what we're here to do, okay? This is not self-beneficial in any way, shape, or form. The last hour and 38 minutes of my life could have been spent doing something else. I'm here to do this. You're all here because we're passionate about it. Is there someone who would be opposed to looking for a more mutual solution at this point in time? I mean, involving both tenants as well as then landlords? Is there a position? I mean, is there a sentiment within the room that would say, yeah, I think something needs to be done, but this isn't it? Is there, where's the rubber meeting the road on this one before? I need you to, sorry, because we're all formal on that. I need you to identify and come forward.
Jeff Eiler, I live on Smith Station Road in Hanover.
Thanks, Jeff.
Sir, I think with all due respect, the people have indicated that there are procedures in place that are working very well. Mr. Miller is doing his job, and he's doing it well. You're just trying to reinvent the wheel? Maybe not to make a name for yourself, but obviously this gentleman has a vendetta. This gentleman's angry that it's not going his way.
Let's not make this personal. It doesn't.
I voted against the last time.
That doesn't.
Hardly.
Just down the middle of the road, please.
I mean, that's all I have to say is that there are procedures in place that work well. Safety is not your responsibility. I'm for safety, but you can't govern it. You can't govern that. That's not your responsibility as a public official. Don't tread on constitutional Constitution either. That's a scary place to be. So.
Point taken. I'm gonna wait on. I respect my authority here, if you will. I'm gonna open it up for anyone who has not been heard from yet, because a breath of fresh air might be just what we need. So anyone who, out there first. Councilor Rowland, Vice President Rowland, would you like to share something?
Scott Rowland, 307 Primrose Lane.
I'll come back then for.
And I'm a property owner, my wife and I are property owners, and both residential and commercial. And I've been doing this for, I don't know, 15-ish years. And I would be more than happy to reinstitute a working group, team, whatever it is you would like to call it, of property owners, inspectors, and I highly respect Mr. Chris Miller's work, and he's a true professional in his craft. We got property owners, government inspector type of people, and tenants, and whomever else would be relevant to put together, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 people to address this. And I think one of the things that needs to first be identified is what is the problem we're trying to solve? Because to me, it hasn't come out clear, what is the problem? And I believe Mr. Becker said last week, one of my favorite quotes, it's solution in search of a problem. All kidding aside, I think we need to identify the problem, put a work group, or whatever you want to call it, together, and see what we can do to find a solution for the problem that we identify. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Ricart.
Scott already have a name. Hanover Betterment Workshop.
There you go.
My question would be if part of this is to just have people register their rental units, we already have that.
Yeah.
So it seems to me part of the problem is that's not working, and how do you get landlords, good and bad, to register their properties? If that's what the first initial part of this is about, is just getting them registered. I don't know how you make people do that.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the
Right.
points of this whole thing.
Exactly.
How do we define things as far as knowing how many rental properties? We're sitting here, I'll speak for myself, but try to speak for the group, that about half of the residential properties in the borough are currently rented.
So says the census, and that Seems
anyone would
directionally
like to
correct.
differ with that. If not, that's the beginning point of the conversation. So, and no disrespect to Vice President Rowland, but my mindset's just a touch different in that I'm not offering a solution in search of a problem, but I think that what real leadership does, real leadership prevents problems in the first place. And if we're going to a point where we are looking at, say, more rental occupied properties than we are owner occupied properties, we have to be in front of this thing. That's what leadership does. Leadership is more proactive rather than reactive. And speaking for myself, not telling my opinion, but my methodology to my opinion is how do we keep this residents of the Borough of Hanover everything that our responsibilities are to entail. So I applaud the efforts. Anyone who can come forward with progressive thinking as to how we do this is definitely warranted here. I would hope that those of you who may be in stark opposition, either one way or the other, would at least come to the middle of the road and say that this is not about politics. This is not about the political world that we find ourselves in, that this is ultimately about how we keep this place the greatest place in the Commonwealth to live. And that's what we want, right? Amicably, with a balance between the interest of tenants as well as those who want to profit from having the services of renting their properties. Is there anyone who can bring something different or a unique perspective to the forefront before we move into our meeting?
I would just ask that you include Mr. Miller in any committee that is appointed or comes out of this, because I think the chairman would be surprised, I was, at what we are doing right now and the success of that. He's inspecting he's responding to every code complaint, every single one, within 48 hours. That's pretty impressive. So before we say we need to be focused on getting ahead of this thing and be proactive, I think we need to find out what we're doing. And I think if you looked into it, you'd figure out, like, I realized this is working, and I didn't hear him say it wasn't, so maybe we ought to talk to him.
I saw a party that was foreign. Yes? I'm sorry, I need you to come forward, name, address, and then we'll hear you.
Barry Brashear, 700 Mall Avenue. I've heard so many different things here tonight, and I think that most of us are all in agreement on this, so that's why I sat back down. I really didn't have anything more to say. I will say this, I bought my first rental property here in 1990. I take extreme pride in what I do. I treat all my tenants with respect. Saturday night, I got a call at 9:30 at night. I was laying on my couch watching college football in my night clothes. And the man said, "Barry, I hate to bother you." He said, "I have water leaking out of my furnace." I said, "Give me 10 minutes. I'll put my jeans and my coat on and come up." I was up there till 10:30 fixing the problem. I just think that the way we're going about it now would be an overreach, and it would penalize people. We talked long enough about this. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Is there, just before we leave it, and I don't mean to scratch anything else open that hasn't been open yet, but is there anyone on the landlord, the owner, from the rental perspective, that would take comfort or solace in the fact that they would have in their file a document that says that your property passed an inspection, whatever that is, and that if anything bad would ever happen to your property, and in the litigious world that we live in, no offense, Attorney Becker, but that someone could not potentially harm you further through an act of God, let's say, that was of none of your volition and or intent or wanting, that would help you potentially sleep at night? Anyone? Go ahead.
I would.
It's an area I think of needed talked about.
I do. I already pay a service to do that.
Okay.
I pay a service to inspect my sprinklers, my fire monitoring, my emergency lighting, fire, smoke alarms. They do that for me. I pay somebody to do that.
How common are you, not to put you on the spot, but is that normal? Or are you running a tighter ship, say, than some?
I want to run a business that makes money, right? and keeps people safe.
Agreed.
And if I can do that, keep it clean, and I think all landlords would want to do this.
Benefits only you.
It benefits.
And all of us.
It benefits me, and it benefits the tenants, it benefits the community. And yes, we do have bad people, and I think that's your real concern. We need to get together, and I appreciate the efforts and words that we want to get together and find a problem and then fix it. But I think something like you just are mentioning, maybe a check mark, like the Twitter check mark. Yeah, he's been verified. I get it, but don't impose that on us. Let's do a proactive, like you were talking about. Do a proactive thing. Hey, Reading Properties, they're check marked off and they're inspected and things, and they've given the paperwork to show that they are inspected.
But to my point, thank you for answering that, but to anyone in the room, again, is this and I'll be very blunt, is this my property's worth $1,000 a month, as is, take it or leave it, and my competitor, if we are competitive in the rental business, is worth $1,100 a month because he checked all the boxes? Is this something that if, not saying as is, get out of that box, but if something as is, can we come up with a program that works for everyone so that it is beneficial to owners as well as tenants? That, ladies and gentlemen, is my personal opinion of good government. Can we do it, and how?
Can I speak to that? I think if you create an incentive for landlords to do that voluntarily through a tax break.
Incentive sounds
now we're
good.
talking about, might be something for the workshop.
Okay.
Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, but I could also follow up on that point. If you have your property inspected by the borough in any of these other jurisdictions, and there's a slip and fall, or there's a fire, there's some.
Doesn't mean anything.
I wouldn't go that far. Now, I'm not mean to be disrespectful to the chair who's saying, look, this might be something you ought to think about. I think a landlord would raise that as one of the reasons why they were not negligent and say, look, we had this inspected, we're doing everything. One of the points, that's not going to absolve you from liability. So if we're looking for a real carrot to get a landlord to say, boy, we're going to do this because we're off the hook if something happens bad from that point on, it's not going to happen. But, it might be a factor in a defense.
I don't think that, as a borough council member, I really don't think we have the answers tonight. But I really think that this workshop will bring the answers for the betterment of Hanover. And I think we should give it a beginning, Bill.
Agreed. I've got to let Councilor Rupp in.
Okay.
Councilor Rupp?
Just following up on your question.
Yeah.
I had several landlords who told me that they would welcome a registration and even eventually an inspection to show that they do run a tight ship and they do get everything inspected. Just as Mr. Reddy said, he gets the water inspected, he gets everything else inspected. Why not get where you live inspected for your renters? But I'm talking, he was just happy that they would be registered. And he said, I'm proud of what I do, and I feel many people here are very proud of what they do as a person who's an owner. So that would just be reinforced. And I don't want this answered, it's just a rhetorical question. I'm not sure what I see the problem is, because if you're a good landlord and you care about your property, you're like, okay, come on down. Yeah, because I got good stuff going on. I don't have a bad place, so I don't need that question answered. And I don't want it answered, I just throw it out there.
It seems as if, though, we've got good apples in the room.
Yeah, we do. I think we have very good landlords, but there are some that are
And the fear is of the
bad.
unknown, which is what might this council enact after we've opened the door to this, is what I'm sensing.
I agree.
That's not true. This ordinance in and of itself is the problem. I mean, Councilwoman Rupp doesn't want me to respond, but if you pass a
Stated it mildly.
well, an ordinance that's going to require inspections is going to put us in direct conflict with tenants.
Yeah.
Because most leases, I know the gentleman that spoke that's a tenant said, my lease says landlord can come in, give us notice, I trust him, he's fine, this is a great program. Well, it's not for everybody, because no other lease that I'm aware of says that the landlord can go in and inspect anytime they want. It puts landlords in direct conflict with tenants who don't want you in there. I mean, maybe the gentleman does, but not everybody does.
Right.
And if they don't, and they're in there sleeping, and you try to get in, the door's locked, what are you gonna, you're gonna wiggle the door? To Councilwoman Rupp's point,
Right.
It's not just about the fear of the future or the unknown. It's about the fear of this right now. I'm at that door, I got my inspector, I sent the notice, I try the lock, it's locked, I take the key and open it, I look in, it's dark, I know he's in there, he just worked night shift, am I gonna go in and walk around his apartment? I don't know. I'm a little uncomfortable with that because, number one, my lease doesn't allow it. And number two, people have firearms. And I no disrespect to council, I'm not trying to say anything to shock anybody.
But just as an aside, in our minds, it is we will, with, 2 weeks to 4 weeks' notice, it will be on Thursday at 10:30 in the morning. If that doesn't work, then suggest an alternative. This isn't a middle of the night kind of thing. That's,
They don't care. They don't want to be bothered.
no, I know, but I think you're maybe over.
You're asking about whether there's a
Dramatizing
problem
it.
with the inspection ordinance right now. And the answer is yes. It's not just a fear of the future or the unknown.
Agreed. Thank you. Anyone else?
Since the times at this point seem to just be going round and round, so the
Yes.
questions that you asked and the questions
I
that
would
keep
like for
asking
new
here,
input if there's
yeah,
something
this
we
is a
have not
solution.
looked at.
Go on it, so we
Yes.
can move on.
Yes.
It seems like everyone's pro-workshop, so maybe if, after the meeting tonight, you instill a date, you put it together, you create a link on the website where people can sign up their direct email, you can send out emails saying when it's gonna happen, and then everyone can gather those questions and come to the workshop. But for this particular one, I would recommend maybe just,
Yes.
so people don't have to worry about those things.
Okay.
Just
Well,
nix it and start from scratch.
I think if you stick around, you'll find out.
Phil, can we get a sign-up sheet out to pass through for those that might be interested?
I think after, I mean, we've got an order, we've got an agenda that's printed, and after we dispense with the business, whichever way it goes, then then by all means, yes.
Just to capture the enthusiasm at the moment.
Representative Mallon.
Thank you. Just one final thought. I'd like to say congratulations. You just had your first workshop meeting.
Yes.
Okay? And I think what we proved by this workshop is that this ordinance is far from ready for being for prime time. And it needs to be put aside, table, whatever you want to call it, until the workshop comes up with a viable solution to what you're looking for. And thank you, Mrs. Fung, for coming up.
Thank you.
Mr. Mao, you might have a career in politics. Anyone else? Anything else? Yes, Representative Klunk.
Are we done with the rental ordinance?
We can be. How about a segue?
Get us out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm State Representative Kate Klunk, and it's an honor to be with you here tonight. To transition from the conversation previously, just so you all know and everyone here, my office does provide information for tenants and landlords that is readily available. We also have a great working relationship with an organization called Tenfold, which also assists those tenants across the districts, and we've actually had some really great success with those who are renting, who come to our office seeking some advice through Tenfold. So I just want to pass that along to you. But I come tonight bearing some good news for Hanover Borough and the greater Hanover community. So for those who are not aware, late on Friday afternoon, we received word that Hanover Borough will be receiving $5.5 million as part of a RACP grant for a new public safety and administration building.
Excellent.
Which is truly historic for this borough and this community. We have not seen that type of state investment in this community, at least in my lifetime. So I am proud to stand before you today to say thank you for working with my office. It was an honor and a privilege to work with the entire council and your staff here at the borough in making this happen. And I want to say big, huge thanks tonight to the House Republican Caucus for standing behind me as I put this application proposal before them, and they were willing to say yes to funding this. So thank you so very much to my House leadership, especially Representative Stan Saylor, Chairman Saylor of the Appropriations Committee. He has a huge soft spot in his heart for Hanover, and we are very grateful for his love of Hanover as he is retiring here. But I come bearing good news too. The appropriations position on the Republican side was just one today, right before Representative Dan Mal and I came here tonight, by Seth Grove, another York Countyan, which is really, really great for York County. So good news on that front. For the borough, we look forward to continuing to work with you on this project. Hopefully, we can get this in the works soon. But I know that this is a huge win, especially for our public safety folks, and especially to Chief Martin and his folks in the police department for everything that you do. Hopefully, this will be a great recruitment tool for you, because I know the facilities here in this building are just not up to snuff for what you guys deserve. So we look forward to that, and I also wanted to share some other great news on the RACP front. UPMC Hanover Hospital, we've been working with them on a behavioral health unit in the emergency department. We were able to get some funding for them through RACP last year, and we also secured another $1 million to help them with that continued support for those in our community who are having mental health and behavioral health issues in an emergency situation. So it's a really great win for Hanover and the greater Hanover community here this week. So thank you for working together on this. You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So thank you.
One question, on that $5.5 million, is that just designated for the new building, or is that type of plan can be used in more areas?
It's specifically for the public safety and admin building.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, double thank you.
Katie, thank you, or I should say Kate. I
I
always
know,
say,
I know.
I've known Kate since she was Katie.
I
'cause
know,
they-
Councilman Rowland, yes.
Congratulations and thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm very
Thank you.
proud of you.
It's an honor to represent the borough in this entire district, and wherever I can help out, whether it's a RACP grant or a Parks grant, sewer, whatever it is, from here down to New Freedom, I'm happy and willing to help make sure that southwestern York County is a wonderful place to live. So, thank you for making that easy for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to open it up for our online following with the able assistance of community media. Anyone's chomping at the bit?
If you're joining us via Zoom, you can unmute your mic if you'd like to address council.
Nothing? I will now close the public comment portion of the meeting and move into the printed agenda. First item the chair requests is a motion and a second for the approval of the consent agenda items as printed.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor thereby signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Moving into committee reports, we'll start with Vice President Rowland on Finance and Personnel. What say you, sir?
Okay. Consideration of a motion to approve the advertisement of our 2023 Hanover Borough budget for public inspection for a period of 10 days from December 2nd through December 16th, 2022, prior to our final adoption in December.
So motion.
Is there discussion required?
I have a point I'd like to make.
Yes, ma'am.
It does say that that's going to be open for public inspection. I would encourage anybody who thinks we're not transparent with what we do here to check out that budget. It's online. We don't have tons of money. We're really happy that Kate got us that money. So I would encourage you to check that out and you see where all our money's going.
It is on the website, just.
We're approving advertisement.
be.
Yeah, it's gonna be advertised.
After we do this, it will be.
Yeah, after we approve it.
This is the enabling mechanism.
Motion. Bill?
I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Councilor
Okay.
Rowland?
Thank you. Consideration of a motion to approve ordinance number 2334 to establish a procedure for waiving additional charges assessed against a taxpayer who fails to pay their real estate taxes in a timely manner due to failure to receive notice.
So motion.
Any discussion prior to the vote? We have Secretary Felix to assist me with a roll call vote.
Dr. Rupp,
Yes.
Mr. Ricart,
4.
Mr. Greenholt,
Yes.
Mr. Cross,
Yes.
Mr. Lockard,
Yes.
Mr. Fuentes,
Yes.
Mr. Hegberg,
Yes.
Mrs. Funk,
Yes.
Mr. Rowland,
Yes.
Mrs. Greenholt?
Yes.
We have 10 in favor and 0 against.
Motion passes. Counselor Rowland?
Thank you. Item 3, consideration of a motion to approve the contract for a fully integrated government accounting software platform with Springbrook Holding Company, LLC.
Second. Is there discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries.
Item 4, consideration of a motion to direct the Civil Service Commission to provide a certified hiring list to cover the current vacancies in the police department.
So motion.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 5, consideration of a motion to approve the applications of the following 5 employees who are eligible to retire under the Early Retirement Incentive Program. This is a pretty impressive list of people in their service. Stephen Wright, Water Department meter reader, 42 and a half years of service. Robin Smith, Water Department dams lead caretaker, 35 and a half years of service. Michael Harmon, Water Department filter plant supervisor, 39 and a half years of service. John Slagle, Water Department filter plant lead man, 35 and a half years of service. And finally, Timothy Holland, Public Works Department labor foreman, 44 and a half years of service.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
We have a round of applause for those folks.
I think we should. Okay,
Thank you,
that's,
Mr. President.
Thank you,
That concludes
sir.
my report.
let's transition into government policy. Dr. Rupp?
Thank you. I'm asking for consideration of a motion approving the 2023 asset capitalization policy.
Second by the rental.
Is there a second?
Second.
Counselor Greenholt? Any discussion? Calling the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Rupp. We will get into Department of Planning and Engineering. Counselor Hegberg.
Consideration of motion to approve ordinance number 2335, comprehensive amending and supplementing and replacing rental property ordinance number 1796 as codified in Chapter 278 of the Code of the Borough of Hanover.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Going once. Going twice. Seeing no second, I'll ask you to move on.
Consideration of motion to approve the contract with Downstream Strategies in the amount of $30,000.
Excuse me. That not being executive, that's where it stays, right?
Correct.
Okay, so,
It's not an order of business. Counselor Hegberg?
$30,000 in Bucart Horn Architects in the amount of $13,500 for a market analysis and feasibility study and analysis evaluation paid in full by grants from the Wareheim Foundation in the amount of $35,000 and the York County Economic Alliance in the amount of $8,500.
I
So
would second
motion.
that.
Discussion? All in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, a nay. Motion carries.
Consideration of a motion to approve the contract with Forever Media for an informational radio advertisement on the changes to metered parking for 6 weeks in the amount of $2,976.
Second?
Discussion?
Yes. Can I have?
Let's
how
go with
many-
Counselor Funk first. Counselor Funk?
What percentage of people do you think that we're going to reach through this amount of money that, I mean, it's a small amount of money, but, I mean, when we're looking at percentages of people from our community and then those in the outer perimeters.
I think that information was in the
I mean,
packet.
are we hoping,
Yes, it was.
have we checked into that?
I don't know the answer, but I believe it was in
Information was in the
the
packet that talks
analysis
about
we
the
were
percentage
given.
of people that they would reach.
What was the analysis? I'm
Go ahead.
sorry, I can't retain everything.
Okay, oh, it was, I'm just sharing it
Do you
was.
remember?
I don't remember, I read
more
it,
than
I remember they had a
What?
thing on
Probably
that. I
more
don't-
than Facebook.
Probably more than Facebook. Okay.
Do we have it on there? I don't know. There it is.
Yes.
So we voting or?
Oh, well, yeah, there was
look it
a
up.
second
That-
question,
it was
sorry.
in
I
the-
don't
it was in the
I don't know if she
supplement.
provided the answer. Counselor Greenholz?
So we're going to advertise,
Hang on, there's a question afoot.
so we're going to advertise the changes to the parking meter. Is that the way they are, or obviously they need to be restructured?
Right.
It'll be
So
adjusted.
are we going to adjust it first before we advertise it? We don't want to advertise it the way it is.
I think it's the
No,
app and other
I think
things.
it's for suggestions to change it.
It's okay.
It's about downtown.
Are we going to change it? Did you say to Gary we are going to change it? Is that what you're asking for? Gary?
It's also advertising.
Asking if we're going to advertise it,
Yeah.
the new parking meter system, is it going to be advertised the way it is, or after it's restructured?
I'm going to ask
I think so.
our interim,
The actual ad was actually in the packet.
Bill, to
I read
answer.
it to you.
Right.
Could you read it out loud to us, please?
This is in the packet.
Do you have it handy?
I do.
Would you mind reading it to us, please?
The idea is that a lot of people complaining about the parking meters didn't know that this was happening. It's been advertised on the Facebook, on our website. We've sent out information. There's FAQs. So this radio ad is another option to try to get the information out there. And as the program is changed, this will be another way to get the information out there. This is advertising on 98.5 and 107.7, which are our two main local radio stations. So we're hoping that, that people, it's just another way to try to reach out to people to get the information out there as the program changes.
But Amy, this is concurrent information that we have
Right
now where we've.
Right now, it's just talking about how there is another option, not, if you don't have change, you can use the app. And it talks about free parking, and it also directs people to the website for more information about our parking program.
But the details
will likely change.
Yes.
I know that we've tried to update, or we have on the 15-minute parking, correct? Is that going to be included?
We have to work that out yet.
Yes.
everything's
We have to work that out yet. This is just for the
That's
advertising.
coming, so that won't be in the advertisement. We're simply educating the people to what is taking place now concurrently downtown.
Yep.
Okay, and that 15-minute parking change, will that be on next month's agenda, or how is that
No,
going to
they
be?
decided to move
No.
it to the enhancement committee to discuss, and they don't meet again until January.
That's right, I remember that. See, it all comes back. Okay,
Because I
thank
had
you.
made the suggestion to do a compromise and make it simple and make every meter downtown.
Right.
For every quarter, you get 15 minutes.
Right.
And for those that want to use the app, they
Right.
have that option to use the app. For those that want to use quarters, they have the option to use quarters, because not everybody has a smartphone.
That's right.
And I did talk to AJ, and he did tell me that it is possible to make all of our meters where they would take a quarter for every 15 minutes.
How long would that take, AJ?
Because
How long does it take to adjust to the 15-minute parking cycle of 25 cents?
Because our meters are very antiquated, it will take quite some time, just like it took quite some time to adjust them to how they are now.
Okay, thank you.
It is a work in progress, to say the least. Okay,
Apparently.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
One opposed? Motion carries. We're still up with you, Counselor Hegberg.
Consideration of motion to accept the 90-day extension for the preliminary final land development plan for George Street property as filed by Larry R. Redding. Plans dated July 12, 2022.
Second? Any discussion required?
Did you pull that last night?
We withdrew.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wait a second.
Yeah, that's
You
not how it
withdrew
works.
your zoning application. The land development plan is still pending before the borough. It's proper to.
We sent an email today.
Well, it's proper to grant the extension, and then you'll withdraw it, and it's withdrawn.
Okay.
We sent an email.
We got to do what we got to do. It's
Yep.
formality.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Counselor Hegberg?
Consideration of a motion to adopt Resolution 1358 for the preliminary and final subdivision plan for 712 Ash Drive.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
No.
One opposed. Motion carries.
That completes the report.
Thank you, Counselor Hegberg. We'll segue into public safety. Counselor Lockard?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Request a consideration of a motion to approve ordinance number 2332, amending chapter 346 of the Code of the Borough of Hanover to modify restricted parking in the Cherry Tree Phase 1 development.
Second.
Is there discussion? Secretary Felix, with your able assistance, a roll call vote, please.
Dr. Rupp,
Yes.
Mr. Ricart,
4.
Mr. Greenholt,
Yes.
Mr. Kress,
Yes.
Mr. Lockard,
Yes.
Mr. Fuentes.
Yes.
Mr. Hegberg,
Yes.
Mrs. Funk,
Yes.
Mr. Rowland,
Yes.
Mrs. Greenholt.
Yes.
We have 10 in favor and 0 against.
Motion carries. Thank you, Counselor Lockard. This time, we will move into our distinguished mayor's report.
And this is the real reason why everybody's here tonight, just to hear my report.
Just nod in agreement.
Better be good.
We'll get through it together.
All right. Thank you all for coming tonight. October 1st, I made a surprise visit to Clearview Elementary first graders to personally thank them for the wonderful letters and pictures they drew for me as part of their learning about government curriculum. Thank you to Ms. Balafutis, who is a Hanover Public School District graduate, and the great and fun first grade students. And I've decided every Friday that's how I'm going to end my day, because you would have thought a rock star walked into the room. So it was fun. I was amazed some of them actually knew who I was. That was a shock to me. So, October 11th, Chief Martin, Lieutenant Bunny, co-responder Jennifer Horton, and I attended the For the Love of a Veteran breakfast held at the VFW. Hanover is fortunate to have so many active and involved organizations working for the betterment of our veterans. October 14th, the YWCA held another outstanding Emerge Women's Conference. I presented a proclamation and spoke in recognition of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. The event was hosted by Flora Pastorero, and an inspiring speech was given by Jennifer Foxworthy. Now, you had to be there for this joke, but she's no relationship to Jeff Foxworthy. But she is of Unstoppable You Ministries, and also Commissioner Julie Wheeler imparted voting information. The day also included many breakout sessions by professionals on topics of different interests. It was lots of fun and camaraderie. Councilwoman Rupp was also in attendance, and Janice Bankert knocked it out of the park again. She is the YWCA person who put all of that together, and it was a sold-out crowd. October 18th, I was the guest speaker at a sorority where I talked about what I do and how local government works. I also informed them on current events and projects happening in the borough and answered their numerous questions. I had a great discussion with a group of well-informed and interested ladies. October 20th, we celebrated the grand opening of Bearskin and Laser Center to downtown Hanover with a red and white polka dot ribbon cutting and party. They are located at 17 Carlisle Street. They offer many services for the face and body in their beautiful new facility that will have you looking stunning for Christmas and New Year's Eve festivities. October 22nd, the Hanover Area Chamber of Commerce held the well-attended 5th Annual Snacktown Brewfest. It was a beautiful fall day where the attendees got to taste great beer from a plethora of breweries, eat delicious food, and listen to live music. So that concludes my report, but I would like to share a letter I received. I'm going to cut parts of it out because it was kind of long, but it came from a retired Jersey City fire chief. He was a former superintendent of the United States Naval National Fire Academy, former Deputy United States Fire Administrator, and former senior executive in the Federal Emergency Management Agency responsible for managing federal disasters, and he was there at the World Trade Center at 9/11. He also was instrumental in Hurricanes Katrina and Sandy. The reason for that part was just to establish his credibility for the rest of the letter. So he can tell a lot about an organization's executive leadership, management, training, and performance by watching an engine company at a car fire, a police officer directing traffic, or a medic putting grandma back into bed. Those actions tell me all I need to know, not necessarily the big, huge events that you see people come out, they come out for. So on November 11th, his 18-year-old granddaughter was coming home from work on Eisenhower Drive when something happened to her steering. The car was undrivable. It was dark, and she was alone on a busy street and never had a breakdown before and didn't know what to do except for cry. Enter two of the Hanover Borough police officers. Fortunately for her, they came to her assistance. They blocked her vehicle and lit the area to protect her and her vehicle from being struck by oncoming traffic. Finally, this gentleman got there, and shortly before the tow truck arrived, the officers were assuring, professional, and concerned for all of us. While this was an unpleasant event, these officers made it bearable. So by now, he was writing about Sergeant Jared Allman and Officer Adam Bollinger. Adam Bollinger is actually one of our newest officers. In a word, they were terrific. Any police chief in America would be proud to have them on their force. Fortunately, they're on ours. Their appearance, competence, and concern spoke volumes about the Hanover Police Department's leadership, supervision, professionalism, and community concern. While just a normal night at work for these two, it made a difference to my granddaughter, her family, and me. So, thank you, Chief. I'm done.
Thank you, Mayor Whitman. Is there a fire commission report? I think I saw our chief. There was a fire.
Second alarm, yeah.
He's gone.
Wow.
The dog burned his homework.
That's a good reason to get out. Okay, with that being said, I will open us up for one last public comment portion. Those of you who took your valuable time to come out and see us this evening in the room, what say you? Nothing's okay? Yep.
Open to a list to be contacted for the next time you want to talk about doing inspections or whatever the problem is. We can take care. I
Thank you.
appreciate extending an invitation.
Thank you.
We want to be on the committee that we talked about. I think Councilwoman Funk's point is well taken. We'd like to be part of that. We just want to know how.
Yes, and we will be totally in touch.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anyone else in the room? Online?
Those are joining us via Zoom, you can unmute yourself if you'd like to address council.
Nothing? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion of the meeting and call your attention to the upcoming events. Council decided to have Thanksgiving on Thursday, so I don't know if that fits with your plans or not. And we're still up in the air on Christmas being the 23rd or the 26th, but we'll get back to you on that. All kidding aside, as a personal thank you to all of you who exercise your right to be here and your participation in good government, and for your in the forefront of your minds, the conduct that you exercise, knowing that you are leaders and leading by example of those who follow behind you. And what I mean by that is we make our world, not anybody else. With that being said, I respectfully request of council a motion to adjourn.
So motion.
Moved.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
See you next month. We're adjourned.
If
Thank
you
you.
all would like, I have a tablet if anybody wants to put their name on it.